Hello again everyone, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera. Today I'm wearing my nice blue Hawaiian shirt here, and that means that I am not in Tokyo today. This week we happen to be in Okinawa enjoying a short autumn holiday. We're just here for a few days and we'll be returning home at the end of the week. For those of you who have ordered cameras from my online store, you might have noticed that they haven't been shipped yet. They'll be shipped as soon as we return, and you should receive your cameras by the end of next week. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the subject of today's video, and this is one of the more cool and interesting cameras which I have reviewed. This is the Canon VT, which was released by Canon way back in 1957. Now the Canon VT is a really cool camera and a very cutting-edge camera for its time. At this time, Canon was really trying to find a way to dominate the photography market with their rangefinder cameras, and they produced a large variety of different cameras, each one being an improvement over the previous model. We had several cameras in the V series, and then of course that was followed by the Canon P and the Canon 7 and the Canon 7S and so on. Of all the cameras which Canon made in their rangefinder line, the VT I think is one of the most interesting. And that's mainly because of this trigger winding system which they put in these cameras. This was a very technologically advanced feature at the time, as motor drives and such were still kind of in the development stage and just starting to come out in the market. And the ones which were introduced were rather big and clunky and heavy and required things like external battery packs and things like that. So in order to make a quick winding system which could be used by press photographers, the trigger winding system was quite a good idea. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your opinion, it was kind of a short-lived thing. Canon didn't produce this kind of system for very long. They put it in this camera here, as well as in their Canon Flex SLR cameras, but by the time that these cameras were hitting the market, motor drives were already starting to find their way into the marketplace, and more improved, smaller, lighter ones with internal batteries followed. And that pretty much rendered the trigger winding system obsolete. But I like the trigger winding system. It's very simple. It's very quick. You can just wind it very rapidly, and it was very good for photographers who were shooting at things like celebrities and such back in the day. This allowed them to hold the camera up over their head and wind the camera quickly without trying to operate it with the thumb lever, and it was a very good system for that kind of, I guess, action photojournalism type of photography. But of course, it fell by the wayside when the invention of the motor drive, or the motor drive, was perfected. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at the features, controls, and functions of this really cool camera. We'll go ahead and start at the top here as usual. And one thing you'll notice is the top of this camera is completely flat, and that's kind of like a holdover from the time when these rangefinder cameras were bottom loaders. And what that meant is you would sit the camera on a table or something upside down, and since it had a flat surface, it would stay upside down, and that would allow you to use both hands to load in the film and the take-up spool easily. And well, it was never really easy to load those, but easier than it would be otherwise. Even though this camera has a conventional film loading door, and you can load film just like any other 60s, 70s, 80s film camera, they still retain this kind of design, and this was just the fashion of the time. The first thing we have here on the left is the connection for the flash gun. This is the same system which was used on the later cameras like the Canon P and Canon 7. It kind of locked on the top here. Canon made a thing which was called a camera holder, which was a cast aluminum thing which was painted black and attached to the bottom, and allowed you to attach a flash bracket and other accessories to the camera. This was the main weakness to this camera design, was the flash socket on the side. In the 1950s and early 1960s, they hadn't really standardized a flash system yet, and a lot of different makers had their own idea of what was the best flash system. This was Canon's. Next to that we have this apparatus here, and this is for the film rewind knob. If you push this lever backward in the direction of the arrow, the knob pops open and allows you to rewind the film. This is kind of a small thing. It takes a little while to rewind the film with this. In later models like the P and 7, they actually have a rewind lever with a roller tip, which makes the job a little bit easier. But still, this works okay, and this was superior to some of the other cameras which were on the market in 1957. In the center here we have this accessory shoe, and a lot of people would think this would be the natural place to put the flash, but the design of this camera, this shoe was actually meant to hold the accessory finders for the longer lenses. Lenses like the, say, 80mm, 85mm, 135mm lenses. You would put the accessory finder. When you bought these lenses, they would come with the finder in the case. And if you fit the finder in here, this little chrome button, which I'm pointing my finger at, this would raise and lower, and that would allow the camera to automatically adjust for parallax when you were focusing the lens. This was a really cool feature, and it made these lenses much more easy to use, and you could still get your photograph composed accurately in case you forgot to adjust the parallax yourself. If you look at some of the old, say, Leica or Nikon finders at the time, they have a dial on them which you have to rotate to adjust for the parallax manually. This camera did it automatically. It would have been wonderful if they could have continued using this feature on the later cameras like the P and the 7. Here we have the film speed adjusting knob, and we have a range of speeds up to 1/1000th of a second, which was a really cool feature back in the days. 1/1000th of a second was quite fast, but there were faster lenses on the market in those days, and with this camera, this camera or this series of cameras, Canon introduced its 50mm f1.2 lens. And to be able to use a fast lens like this, it was very handy to have a faster range of shutter speeds. This is a dual range system here. We have the standard speeds located here on the top, and we have the slower speeds located here on the front. To use the slower speeds, you have to turn the dial to the top to where it says 1 through 130. You have to lift up on the dial when you turn it. If you don't lift it up, it's locked and it won't move. So make sure to lift it up and turn it to the desired shutter speed, and then let it pop down into place. And we have a setting here for the different settings here for mainly the flash settings. We have X sync and of course the regular sync speed, which is 1/30th of a second. Next to that we have the shutter release button, which accepts a standard cable release, and we have the collar around this, which releases the winding mechanism and allows you to rewind the film. Over here we have a pretty interesting mechanism. This knob here serves a couple of different purposes. One purpose is to program or set a reminder for what film you have loaded, and you have to hold it with two hands, hold the outer part with your one finger, and turn the dial on the inside with the other finger, and then you can change the film speed from one setting to the next. This camera has full manual operation with nothing electronic in it. This system here is just a reminder. It doesn't have any effect on the operation of the camera. What this thing also does is if you pull this up and turn it, this is a film winding knob, or a secondary film winding knob, and this allows you to wind the film and charge the shutter just as you would with the trigger on the bottom. And this is a convenient feature if you happen to have the camera set in its camera holder and have it mounted to a tripod. This allows you to be able to wind the film easily without having access to the bottom of the camera. On the back here we have a release button which you push, and that lowers this winder knob down. We have the film counter dial on the back here, and this isn't an automatic resetting dial. When you load the film, you have to reset it by turning this dial here on the front, this toothed wheel. Pretty simple system, and they have it set here so you can't easily mess up the counter accidentally. The only thing I don't like about this is this dial makes it kind of hard to clean the underside of the top of the camera, because it's kind of tricky to put the top cover back on and line up this counter wheel with this slot. That's the only drawback to it. For users, it's a perfectly wonderful thing. For camera repair people, this is kind of a big annoyance. One thing I haven't pointed out yet on the top is this indicator. We have a setting here for 50, 35, and RF. And what this does is it changes the field of view for the 50mm lens to the 35mm lens, and then RF increases the magnification so you can get more precise focus with whatever lens you happen to be using. If you're using a fast lens where the depth of field is very narrow, you have to focus very precisely, and the RF setting is quite good for that. On the back of the camera, this is the viewfinder eyepiece, and of course this is the dial which you use to adjust the viewfinder settings. The bottom of the camera, we have the trigger wind system, which I mentioned previously. You just pull it down like that to open it. To close it, you push this release lever and it pops back into place. Here we have a standard 1/4-inch tripod socket. On the front here we have the viewfinder window and we have the rangefinder window. Adjusting the rangefinder on this camera is quite easy. For the horizontal adjustment, you remove this access cap screw, put it in a safe place, and underneath that you'll find a smaller set screw which you use to adjust the rangefinder. And for the vertical adjustment, you have to remove this trim ring here, and be careful not to lose it like I just did. And when you remove it, you'll see this lens here, and it has a couple of holes on the top or bottom. And by using a pair of sharp tweezers or just a sharp pick, you can turn this lens one way or the other, and you can do that to adjust the vertical adjustment. This camera has a pretty good viewfinder despite I'm reaching over to get the trim ring here. Okay. Luckily it didn't decide to fall off the balcony and drop down 8 floors, which normally I would expect it to. These things aren't so hard to find. There are some places on eBay and Yahoo who can supply these trim rings if you happen to lose it. And most of these cameras from the V series up to the Canon P use the same one. The self-timer is right here. This has a very reliable self-timer. I don't worry about using the self-timers in these cameras. They very seldom fail. They're not like the weak self-timers which come on cameras with lens shutters. Like most of the fixed lens rangefinder cameras or twin lens reflex cameras, you don't have to worry about using this. Self-timer operation, you just wind it down and you can kind of see it move, and when it gets near the top you know it's going to take a photo. It's a very simple and easy to use thing. Loading the film is simple. Just pull up on the lever here, that opens the film back and you can see the inside of the camera. You can push that open and drop your film cartridge here, lock it in place, just pull the film leader across and feed it into the take-up spool. And it has teeth here so you can kind of wind the film over manually until the film is pulled across and the holes in the top and the bottom of the film are being taken up by the take-up sprocket. Then close the top and just kind of wind and fire the shutter a couple of times, and then reset the film counter to the start position and the camera is ready to go. Anyway, that's it for my video about the Canon VT rangefinder camera. I plan to be making more videos about more cameras as I get them. I'll be making at least 2 more videos next week. I've got a couple of interesting cameras I want to show off. If you'd like to see these videos, please subscribe. I'm always trying to get more people interested in old cameras and film photography, and if you click the like button, that helps. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.